I'm going to show you today how to use Stencil Paste. It's a white paste which comes in 3 different sizes in my range, and you use it through a stencil, you allow it to dry, and then it can be painted over, and it's very solid and robust once it's dry. It'll last forever. It's really hard to remove it. It creates this lovely tactile 3D effect, and it can be used on lots of different surfaces. It's really good to create really ornate surfaces onto plain cupboards. So here are a couple of examples. I've used 3 different stencils painted over in 3 different colours. I'm going to work on an MDF board which is unpainted, and I'm just using a really simple small motif stencil. This is the Jaipur stencil. So I've sprayed the back of it with the spray adhesive, and I can now just push this down into position. If you don't want to use spray adhesive, use a low tack tape and just tape into position. So this is the stencil paste. The way to apply it, I've got here a lollipop stick, but you can use all kinds of different things, like an old credit card, something with a smooth flat surface. And I always, when I'm using this in workshops, I always explain to people that it's kind of like icing a cake. It's got a similar consistency to icing. So take a large amount onto the knife and just push it down through the holes in the stencil and smooth it over. You don't have to be really careful about this. You don't need a smooth surface on the top. It is a good idea to start on one edge and just work your way across rather than moving around. And you can see I've just smoothed that over at the end. You don't have to do that if you're working on a larger surface. You don't need to worry about that. So try and lift your stencil up rather than across when you might smudge the actual paste. I've got a piece of paper here, and I'm just going to lay the stencil onto that piece of paper using my stick. I'm going to scrape off the excess and replace that back in the pot, because as you can see there's quite a lot of stencil paste left on the stencil. And then you can wash the stencil in warm soapy water. Do that straight away because you don't want it to harden off. And then I'm going to leave this to dry. Depending on what the temperature is like, what the weather is like, it takes approximately an hour, and then it's really hard. It's a very hard surface, and then you can paint over the top of it. If you're in a real rush and you want to speed up the drying process, then you can use a hairdryer on a medium heat, not too close, and just blast the whole area. That will really speed up the drying process for you. Okay, so now that the paste has hardened off, it's nice and dry, we can paint over this. I'm going to use just a furniture paint in a colour that I've mixed myself actually, but I know I keep going on about circular motions, but I have to say, when you're trying to paint around all of the different raised shapes, if you do it in little circles, it really does do the job. It gets into all of those little nooks and crannies. So if you imagine that this has been done on the front doors of a small cupboard, wardrobe doors, small boxes, you get this really lovely three-dimensional effect.